Hello, Patriots, praying citizens, and truth seekers. Today is Thursday, December 20th. Let's start with the Q posts, and I'm going to cut back and talk about the news because so much of what Q posted today has to do with the headlines. So let's start with yesterday's post. This is 2626. It starts out with a link to an NBC News article. Flynn hearing leaves far-right conspiracy theorists wanting. Q says the clock is ticking. When will the first alarm ring? If the Senate was the primary target, majority control, 53 to 47, active when? Those new senators are getting sworn in on January 3rd. Executive order designated _ targets active when? Ongoing investigations, .. There are a lot of sealed indictments, according to Sarah Carter. It's all going to come out, Uranium One, the dossier, the Clinton Foundation, etc., according to Sean Hannity. I have pretty good sources, according to Sean Hannity. And then Q says there's a reason why Hannity, Carter, and John Solomon are on stage. So the article that he linked to is from NBC News, a year-old conspiracy theory simmering in both far-right message boards and mainstream conservative publications that predicted former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn would be exonerated fell apart on Tuesday at his sentencing hearing, leaving believers perplexed. Well, we know that Q never promised that he was going to be exonerated on Tuesday. In fact, what we were told by Q is that Flynn is taking a rubber bullet, and he has to stay part of the investigation. He has to stay unexonerated, unsentenced, until it's all over with. So we'll be looking at that story in just a minute, but basically on Tuesday, the judge pushed any sentencing back to March of 2019, and Flynn was determined to hang on to his guilty plea. There is a very good reason why he's doing that. Let's move to the next post. 2628. Why does the fake news media continually attack as they say, so-called only a conspiracy, nothing to see here, lonely guy behind a keyboard movement? The largest media companies in the world giving so much attention, ... Washington Post leading the attack. Logical thinking always wins. And then the link is to that video called This Video Will Get Donald Trump Elected. And I have talked about this in other videos. If you haven't watched the video, you ought to see it. But it basically, Donald Trump just talks about taking down the Clintons and taking down the cabal and the fact that they are doing illegal things and these people should be behind bars. And he also talks about returning the country back to the American people. So Q says this is not another 4-year election. Listen very carefully. Power returned to the people. Long-term solutions. Panic. Q. And then the final post from yesterday, 2629. D-Day, Patriots. We will have our country back. Q+. That is the president. When he says D-Day, Patriots, there was a lot of speculation. What does that mean? Is D-Day the 20th, which was today? Is D-Day January 4th because D is the fourth letter of the alphabet? January 3rd is when the Senate gets sworn in. Is that what that means? So we don't know. We will have to wait and see. Now I want to take you to my newsletter. This has been a tough week for us conservatives. First, we were treated to the second round of testimony before a congressional committee by James Comey, a man who leaked to the press and has repeatedly lied about his actions as former FBI director and his conversations with the president. Comey spent 6 hours being grilled by GOP lawmakers regarding the illegal server operated by Hillary Clinton, her missing 30,000 emails, the illegal spying on Trump and his associates, and other matters. The former director gave few helpful answers, but he did take the opportunity later in front of cameras to defend the FBI, to tear down President Trump, and to mock the Republicans. Next, we learned that the State Department is giving $10.6 billion to Mexico and Central America to help stem migration, leaving many Americans scratching their heads. The plan's aim is to promote better security conditions and job opportunities so that Central Americans and Mexicans can remain in their countries and not emigrate. This was accompanied by the announcement by Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen that any illegals entering from Mexico will be returned to Mexico. Anyone claiming asylum in the U.S. will stay in Mexico for the duration of their immigration proceedings, and those who are not eventually granted asylum will be removed to their home countries. You know, the Obama-era policy of catch and release would recognize these people as they came into the country, sign them up for a hearing date, and say, come back later in 2 or 3 years when you're supposed to see the judge. Well, most of these people wouldn't come back. So catch and release was Obama's way of allowing all these illegal people to misuse the immigration process and just enter at will. So what they're trying to do with this is keep this from happening. That, along with border security, should work to stem the flow. Now, according to GOP headquarters, Walls Work, they report that illegal traffic has dropped 92% in San Diego, 95% in El Paso, 90% in Tucson, and 95% in Yuma, where barriers were built. However, we have some Democrats fighting this tooth and nail, like Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. She's a Democrat from Texas. She's proposed a bill to prohibit taxpayer funds from being used to build the wall. That's not going to pass right now, but it might pass in January when she has her Democrat-controlled House of Representatives. Trump tweeted this on Wednesday. Quote, Mexico is paying indirectly for the wall through the new USMCA, the replacement for NAFTA. Far more money coming into the U.S. because of the tremendous dangers at the border, including large-scale criminal drug inflow. The United States military will build the wall. Now, he may be planning to use the large military spending package that has been passed to build the wall if Congress won't fund it. The fake news media says Trump is to blame for falling stock prices. The president won't sign any bill to fund the government that doesn't include money for border security. The federal government's spending allowance runs out at midnight on Friday. Late Thursday, the House passed a bill giving Trump $5 billion for the wall, but it still has to pass the Senate, which is going to be a problem. The Fed announced it will raise rates from 2.25% to 2.5%, a much more likely explanation for the market loss of 1,400 points this week. Now, Thursday was a big day for 12 illegals who were favored in a ruling by Judge Emmett Sullivan. He's the same guy who, on Tuesday, accused Trump's former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn of treason before recognizing he had made a mistake and apologized. On Thursday, Sullivan ruled that a Justice Department policy under Trump was, quote, arbitrary, capricious, and in violation of immigration laws. The policy didn't allow asylum seekers to be admitted who claimed that they were being threatened in their homeland by domestic or gang violence. Therefore, Sullivan ruled in favor of these 12 deported illegals whose case was filed by the ACLU and the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. Because of the judge's ruling, U.S. taxpayers, you and me, will fund the search for these illegals. They're going to go find them and bring them back on our dime and allow them to stay here until everything is presented to a judge, as well as any others who have been turned away for the same reason. So they can't be turned away because they're, some woman who comes to the U.S. and says, my husband's beating me, she has to be allowed in. As well as anyone who says that the gangs in their countries are violent and they're scary, and so therefore we have to let them into our country. And yes, we always end up paying the bill for them being on welfare. So these people will now be given asylum, released into the U.S. until their court dates, which are generally 2 or 3 years down the road. The problem is that most don't return for their hearings and disappear forever into the U.S. They buy phony papers, and here they are, and we are footing the bill. Now, the left has a counter for every good deed. A GoFundMe account to fund the border wall was set up by a U.S. veteran who is a triple amputee. After only 3 days, the account has more than $5 million. But as good as that sounds, there are several concerns. First of all, GoFundMe is run by a liberal leftist group that takes 10% of the proceeds. Newsweek is reporting that a GoFundMe account has also been set up to purchase ladders to help illegals climb the wall. More than $24,000 was raised the first day. Now, the Flynn hearing was another head-scratcher for conservatives who've been pulling for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn since his ouster from the White House soon after Trump's inauguration. The trouble stems from a call Flynn made to Sergei Kislyak, who is the Russian ambassador to the U.S. The call was made while Flynn was National Security Advisor during the transition period, and it was secretly recorded by U.S. intelligence agencies. FBI Director James Comey sent agents to question Flynn about the phone call, which was entirely legal and part of his job as Trump advisor. The agents were instructed to persuade Flynn to talk without his lawyer. They had a transcript of the call and caught Flynn in a misstatement. He later pleaded guilty to 1 count of lying to the FBI. Flynn was to be sentenced for this crime on Tuesday. Judge Emmett Sullivan accused Flynn of acting as an agent for Turkey at the time of his employment by Trump, and he used the word treason. Of course, the liberal media outlets ran with the headline that Flynn was accused of treason. Afterwards, when the details were sorted out and the judge realized his mistake, he apologized. Flynn stopped working for Turkey 2 months before working for Trump. Sullivan also thought that the FBI had mishandled the interview with Flynn, and he gave Flynn every opportunity to vacate his guilty plea, but Flynn refused. The sentencing was then postponed until March 13th or later. Now, according to Q, let's remember that Flynn, who was a decorated war hero, 33-year Army veteran, took a rubber bullet for the team. As long as the case drags out, Flynn can continue to be involved. He has already talked to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigators for more than 60 hours. While serving in the Army, Flynn had a key role in shaping U.S. counterterrorism strategy and dismantling insurgent networks. He had special senior intelligence assignments. He also served President Obama from July 2012 to August 2014 as Director of National Intelligence. This is what Q says about Flynn. He knows where the bodies are buried. He's safe. Quote, "We protect our patriots," and he will be cleared of all charges. Now, a report by the Republican-controlled House came out in April stating that the agents who interviewed Flynn did not believe that he was lying. But by pleading guilty to something untrue, Flynn gets his testimony on the record. The media interest in Flynn helps keep a laser pointer on the investigation. As an interesting aside, FBI Director Christopher Wray just finished touring all 56 FBI field offices. Was he preparing his foot soldiers for the 65,000, as some are reporting, indictments that they will soon have to execute? Now imagine this. What if, instead of going after Trump, the entire Mueller investigation is really being used to bring down the greatest criminal cabal in U.S. history? Q has hinted that when Mueller was interviewed by Trump for the position of FBI director, which he wasn't eligible for, it was a cover, and the relentless pursuit of Trump associates is staged to hide the actual investigation of the Clintons, Obama, and all their associates. The new Senate will be sworn in on January 3rd with a solid majority of 53 to 47. This majority is necessary to protect the president because the Democrat-controlled House is sure to try and impeach him. Now, take a look at this. Trump is pulling U.S. troops out of Syria and Afghanistan, and James Mattis is stepping out of the Pentagon. The president declared victory over ISIS in Syria, and he announced on Wednesday that all 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria will be coming home. He tweeted that the only reason to be in Syria was the defeat of ISIS, and since that was done, the Pentagon will immediately be pulling troops out. The other news was that 7,000 troops will be coming home from Afghanistan. Now, what's been going on in Syria has been an untenable position for the U.S. President Erdogan of Turkey threatened to launch a full-scale assault on U.S.-backed Kurdish forces in Syria. Erdogan considers these fighters to be a terrorist extension of an opposition group called the PKK. U.S. troops have been training Kurdish militias, which are fighting against Turkey, who is our NATO ally. Therefore, it's a very uncomfortable situation. Even though many Americans are tired of fighting endless wars in the Middle East, neoconservatives aren't at all pleased with this decision. According to Jennifer Griffin of Fox News, there is a fear that the Syrian Defense Forces, who fought alongside the U.S. against ISIS, and Kurdish forces will be slaughtered, and no one will ever work or fight with the U.S. in the Middle East again. That was what she reported from her sources at the Pentagon. Now, Defense Secretary James Mattis is leaving at the end of February. He says the president has the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with his own on these and other subjects. All right, and moving on to this is great. I live in Alabama. I was praying hard and encouraging others to really think about Judge Roy Moore and the Democrat who was running against him, Doug Jones. Now, what happened was Roy Moore had more than just this story I'm going to share with you. He had some allegations of hitting on women who were teenagers when he was a grown man. It's the same old, same old. These women are, found from, I don't know where they find these people. They bring them forward. They have these tales to tell. There's no proof, but the allegations are enough to ruin a person's career. So this is another part of the story. And the question can be asked, who used Russians to win an election? It wasn't the Republicans. The Senate Intelligence Committee asked for a report on Russian interference in the 2016 election to hurt Hillary and help Trump. The report, which was written by a group called New Knowledge, who is run by Jonathan Morgan, found that a false flag project funded by Democrats paid Russian bots $100,000 to write phony posts on social media to denigrate Roy Moore during the Senate campaign in Alabama. Another tactic that was used was to create thousands of fake Russian accounts on Twitter that began to follow Moore. A study published in the Montgomery Advisor read, Russian invasion? Roy Moore sees spike in Twitter followers from land of Putin. Well, that was enough. This story was picked up and published by national news outlets, and there was a second cloud over Judge Moore. So he lost the Senate race by 22,000 votes to Democrat Doug Jones, and this is probably the reddest of red states. It's certainly a head-scratcher. All right, other news. President Trump extended the National Emergency Executive Order for another year. This is the order that deals with serious human rights abuses and corruption. It allows the federal government to seize assets of those who have been caught doing things like human rights abuses and trafficking. Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly is stepping down. He's being replaced by Budget Director Mick Mulvaney. The former Director of Senate Security, his name is James Wolfe. He was caught leaking classified information to his girlfriend, who was about half his age and a New York Times reporter. Wolfe was sentenced on Thursday to 2 months jail time for lying to the FBI. The chief of, and this is another big story that ties into the Q post. So, and it's interesting because remember, Q always is saying future proves past. And so today is the future, and looking back on the Q posts, we'll see that all of what he said, what he told us, is coming to pass. The Chief of Staff to House Speaker Paul Ryan, Republican from Illinois, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. He's a Republican from Wisconsin. Representative Adam Kinzinger, he's a Republican from Illinois, and Senator John McCain, Republican from Arizona, who's deceased, all had a hand in circulating the phony Trump dossier. David Kramer is this guy who worked for John McCain at his charity. He met with a BuzzFeed reporter named Ken Bensinger, according to papers that were obtained by the court. After that meeting, BuzzFeed published the dossier, that was that phony Trump dossier, which tried to suggest that Trump was being heavily influenced by Russia's government. McCain eventually shared the documents with the Obama FBI and CIA, and later Kramer met with Obama officials Victoria Nuland and Celeste Wallander. So this shows you all these people were involved. These are all Republicans. Also, the Washington Free Beacon, which is supposedly a conservative newspaper, it was involved in the beginning. And McCain was the one who got the documents to the Obama FBI and the CIA. So now let's move through the Q posts for today. Now the first one, he reposted this from December 22nd of 2017. And here he talks about one of 22. I don't know if that is investigations, if it's indictments. I don't think it's indictments. I don't know what it is. But he summarizes the different issues and things that were broken, laws that were broken, and who did what. So the first one, DNC breach/dossier. So that would be the breach of the Democratic National Committee and their computer system. Someone broke in. It was probably Seth Rich, who just downloaded the information. He didn't break anything. He didn't, hack. He just took. But under that DNC, Seth Rich, WikiLeaks, Barack Obama, his director of national intelligence, which would be James Clapper, then the CIA director, John Brennan, classes 1 through 12. You have Google and CrowdStrike being involved. And then the DNC murder, directing the murder of Seth Rich through the use of MS-13 gang members, and then they were killed. It was directed by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, according to Q's Post, assisted by the FBI and the Department of Justice, the insurance policy, and then the three families that are the ruling elites: Barack Obama, Hillary, Loretta Lynch, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, and Peter Strzok. So these people were all Department of Justice/FBI. Then look at the top of the next column and you see the support staff: Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Adam Schiff, classes 1 through 6. British intelligence: Hillary's campaign pays for the dossier and the Democratic National Committee pays for it. Class 1 through 4 pays for it. Then it involves Christopher Steele, John Podesta, Eric Holder. He relays whatever the specifications about Russia. And then U.S. Senator, no name would be McCain, and 2 other senators, James Comey, Lynch, Barack Obama, then a second FISA, using the president's daily briefing to disseminate the information. John McCain shopping this dossier around, and BuzzFeed eventually picking it up, then it becomes public narrative. The stage is set, the future prevention and removal operation of getting rid of President Trump. And the ramifications are U.S. intelligence legalized spying on the president when he was a candidate, when he was president-elect, also on members of Congress, Republican senators, the friendly news media, etc. Q. Then there was a repost of 1828 from August 9th, which is even further description of the spying operation involving the White House, the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the DOJ, the FBI, the media, again, the President's Daily Briefing, then 3 shell organizations, Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie, and the Washington Free Beacon. Then there was the tarmac meeting offering Loretta Lynch the Supreme Court seat if she would agree to go along with James Comey's assessment that Hillary had committed no crimes when she used an illegal server. False information used on FISA applications in order to activate a domestic spy campaign, assisted by the UK, feeding information to the CIA, and Q says they never thought she would lose. So the new information from 2630 is a link to the Fox News article, McCain Associate Gave Unverified Steele Dossier to BuzzFeed, according to a court filing, and that's what I read to you in my newsletter. He says, future proves past. News unlocks. You have more than you know. And then the quote from that article, and House Speaker Paul Ryan's Chief of Staff, John Burks, was involved. When did Paul Ryan announce he was retiring? Why would the Speaker of the House retire? What's his age? He's in his 40s. Sometimes reading between the lines demonstrates those complicit in treasonous or traitorous acts are no longer or soon to be in positions of power. Forced? R's easier to remove than D's? D's holding on to power as long as possible, hoping to sway pending action. Cover. Think D class. Think SC. How many senior FBI and DOJ officials have been removed? Many. None left by choice. Nothing to see here. Nothing is being done. The biggest accurate conspiracy, fake news attacks demonstrate what? You're over the target. So just to kind of review that story, so an associate of Senator John McCain, this guy who was working for him at his charity, shared with BuzzFeed a copy of the unverified, salacious opposition research dossier alleging that Russians had compromising material on President Trump. McCain had strenuously denied being the source for BuzzFeed after it published the dossier, which was funded by the DNC and Hillary's presidential campaign. In recent days, the dossier's credibility has increasingly come under question as the Yahoo News investigative reporter who broke news of its existence said many of its claims were likely false. And an advisor to ex-Trump lawyer Michael Cohen said Cohen never went to Prague to pay off Russian hackers as alleged in the dossier. Nevertheless, the FBI extensively relied on the dossier to do what? To get warrants to spy on Trump campaign workers, especially Carter Page. On 4 occasions, the FBI also incorrectly suggested to the FISA court that the Yahoo reporter Michael Isikoff had written an article that provided an independent basis to surveil Page. But it wasn't. It's what they call circular reporting. He was reporting something that they put out, and then they're using him as a source. According to the document, Steele shared a report from the dossier written on December 13th with an unnamed British security official, GOP Illinois Representative Adam Kinzinger, and Senior Director for Russian Affairs at the National Security Council, Celeste Wallander, and House Speaker Paul Ryan's Chief of Staff, John Burks. Of course, Ryan denied that. Then the next post, 2631. This is a story from The Atlantic, Spot the Difference, Oval Office edition. Q says Anons know why. So they went through and they took photos from some of the more prominent presidential Oval Offices like Dwight Eisenhower and Roosevelt and Nixon and Obama, and then they showed Trump's. So here's a picture of Trump's Oval Office. He is the only one who had more than 2 flags. All of the others just had 2 flags, an American flag and the presidential flag. But you see, Trump has all these other flags. And see these streamers hanging down? These are called battle banners. So this is what this person opines. Most previous presidents contented themselves with two large flags behind their desk. One, naturally, is Stars and Stripes American flag. The other is a blue flag bearing the presidential seal. Trump has at least tripled that. In the photos of the new Oval Office, we see 3 U.S. flags and 3 presidential ones. But that's not all. As Commander-in-Chief of all U.S. Armed Forces, the President is frequently in places where the battle flags of the 5 branches of the service are displayed. Those flags are adorned with battle streamers for the campaigns in which the services have seen action. There are a lot of these streamers. The Army's flag has nearly 200. And of course, what they say in this article is that, well, it's just Trump, he's so inadequate that he had to have more flags. Well, we know that that's not the truth. It is the truth that these battle streamers represent the fact that Trump is battling for the future of our country on behalf of the American people. 2632. This link. FBI. This week, Director Wray completed his visit to all 56 FBI field offices beginning in Knoxville in September of 2017 and ending yesterday in Tampa. Director Wray has had the honor of seeing the great work the men and women of the FBI are doing every day throughout the country and the world. Q asks the question, why would the FBI director take the time to visit all 56 FBI field offices around the entire United States? Completed this week. Logical thinking. Q, well, it's possible that he is just shoring up the troops and warning them what is coming down the pike, and the fact that if there are 60,000 or more sealed indictments, they will be the ones delivering those indictments and taking people off to jail. Then the next Q post is a link to an article McCain associate shared unverified Steele dossier with BuzzFeed. And we talked about that. McCain is also called No Name in the Q posts. And this says, drop December 22nd, 2017, U.S. Senator No Name, News Shop, BuzzFeed, News Unlocks, you have the Keystone. So that's from the earlier drop that I read to you, and exactly as Q has said, this is what's all coming out. 2634. This little meme here shows different articles talking about this guy, Matthew Whitaker, who is the acting Attorney General, and Democrats were trying to say that he is not qualified, he can't act as Attorney General, and actually he can. Q says no recusal, old news. So breaking, acting AG Matt Whitaker cleared to take over supervising the Mueller investigation. 2635, a link to Fox News. Democratic operatives created fake Russian bots in Alabama race designed to link Kremlin to Republican Roy Moore. He says underneath, the Democrat Party will cease to exist once it's all exposed. Fake news can no longer control or dampen public awareness of the truth. Dark to light, Q. So it's all extremely interesting. It was difficult to sit through all of that, and I wonder now, is Roy Moore going to file a lawsuit fighting Doug Jones, and will we have to have another election? I mean, it's all extremely interesting. And we pretty much went over everything with that. So now let's just go to the last Q post, 2636. Q says, Alice and Mad Hatter, Q. And then over here, I just pulled a picture of this guy. All right, he wrote an email to Hillary Clinton, one of those emails that was published by WikiLeaks, and he calls himself the Mad Hatter. And Alice, if Alice is Hillary Clinton, which it seemed to be from his email, somebody wrote this on Twitter. So this is the Marty Tory that was in those latest email exchanges between Hillary and Tory. You know, the one where he mentions Alice and that she should be the next monarch. Then he signed off as the Mad Hatter. so interesting. I don't know why Q would say that unless this guy's about to hit the headlines tomorrow or soon. All right, guys, that's it for the Q posts and the report. But those of you that would like to, let's hang around and we'll pray. And, as I pray, this is not necessarily that we've done these things, but our country has been guilty of closing its eyes and just, not wanting to know. How many people do you know don't want to know what's going on and pretend to just live in la la land, and they think, well, I can't do anything, so I'm just going to hide my head in the sand. It doesn't work, and God wants us to be aware of what's going on. He wants us to pray. And I'm not saying that we're in trouble. I'm just saying let's stand on behalf of our fellow citizens who haven't wanted to pay attention, and let's repent. So, Father, help us because we cannot help ourselves. Forgive us for continually electing Republicans and Democrats who are criminals, who think nothing of doing whatever it takes to further their own selves, to promote themselves, to stay in office, to make money. And we don't even talk about the other things that they might be doing behind the scenes that are sickening. But Father, we just ask for you to forgive us for blindly trusting our elected officials and not holding them accountable. In your word, you tell us that you give us leaders that represent who we are as a people. Well, we're fed up, Father, and we do not want this current group of criminals representing us. And we ask you, Father, to help us. Forgive us for being uninformed and ignorant about the enemy's devices, for there are many people who say they don't want to know what Satan does because that just gives him glory. But really what that does when we're not aware of Satan's devices is it gives him power over us because we're ignorant. So Father, help us to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, harmless as doves. Surround us with your protection. Give us discernment and wisdom. Help us to live physically the love, the mercy, and the grace that you showed us through the gift of your only begotten Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's in his name that we pray. And I want to just leave you with these scriptures from Psalm 16. I will bless the Lord who has given me counsel. My reins also instruct me in the night season. I have set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my glory rejoices. My flesh also shall rest in hope. Take heart, fellow saints. God is not blind. His arm is not too short that he cannot save. He has our best interest at heart. He will work all things together for our good. We just need to trust him, and we cannot stop praying. Thank you all so much for being with me. Have a good night. God bless.